Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We have a really important episode today on Daily Palantir. This episode is going to be dedicated to what's going on in Israel with Palantir. We got two new articles today. One from the Times of Israel, one of the biggest media companies in Israel, covering everything that's going on Karp's visit and some of the things he said. He spoke at a university in Tel Aviv along with Peter Thiel. And then second of all, Bloomberg published an article today. They did a piece on Palantir's work in Israel, and we have official confirmation that Palantir is indeed working with the Israeli government post-Hamas attacks. They've been working with them before, but they are confirmed by Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir himself, that they are playing a role in supplying defense tech software. So we've got a lot to talk about. This entire show is going to be dedicated to this main topic. Quickly, just going to go through price action, and then we're going to talk about everything going on in Israel. Big episode. Let's get into it. Okay, very quickly, price action. Just want to show you guys what's going on with Palantir. It's having a pretty good day, 1683, up 2.7% of the day, mainly up because the entire market is up. Main reason for the market being up is, in general, I believe there's a lot of excitement for Bitcoin ETFs that are potentially going to be approved in about 45 minutes from this, if it gets approved. And on top of that, macro is doing well. CPI projections came in that are going to happen tomorrow. Those CPI projections, I'll be live 8:20 a.m. on the market open stream, are a little bit hotter than expected. So 3.3 is the average that most banks think it's going to be. But the CPI is not going to come in so hot that the narrative of the Fed cutting rates eventually is going to change to the narrative hiking rates, or to the Fed hiking rates, which means if that narrative is not changing, I believe the market is overlooking the CPI print that is going to be hot. And we're probably going to see a little bit of a sell-off tomorrow once that print comes in, but it's not going to be some gigantic dip because the market is basically priced in like, okay, it's going to be hot. January, February, it's going to be better. And as a result, the market is forward looking at this perspective, from that perspective. So 1681 on Palantir, up 2.56% of the day. It got to 17 at one point, so it retraced a little bit, but overall, not a bad day for Palantir stock. Okay, let's get into the main news of today. So the first article I want to pull up before we get into the actual article about what they're doing in the war in terms of defense technology is the Times of Israel article. But right before that, here's a picture. This is just, I think I picked this picture for the thumbnail. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be the picture for the thumbnail. This was really beautiful to see. Karp and Thiel have not taken a picture together, from my understanding, in a very long time. I'm sure they have private pictures together, and, you know, Palantir employees have probably seen them, but Palantir shareholders, investors, the public base have not seen Alex Karp and Peter Thiel sit together and talk. They had the annual board of directors meeting in Israel, in Tel Aviv. You see Sham Sanker sitting right there at the left-hand edge. And, you know, we just haven't seen Thiel and Karp, who co-founded this company in 2003, sitting together at the same time. So this was a really, really awesome picture to see for Palantir shareholders. And they were in Tel Aviv speaking about their beliefs on what's going on with Israel. Okay, let's go to the Times of Israel article, and then we'll get into the actual Bloomberg piece that was done today. So I just want to read from this, and then we'll analyze it after. During a visit to Israel, Palantir Technology CEO Alex Karp said he's encouraged about the talent in the country. Karp is the co-founder of Palantir, and their firm's first board meeting of the new year is in Tel Aviv to show solidarity with Israel as the country is more than 3 months into a war with Hamas terror group. I am pretty encouraged about the talent here and that we are getting the best people, said Karp. What I see in Israel is this hybrid of talent that is qualitative and argumentative. It is particularly valuable on the tech side. In a conversation with Karp, tech guru Yossi Vardi called the tech billionaire the most vocal voice in Silicon Valley, supporting Israel not just in words, but also in deeds, including bringing this whole company on board to Israel when few airlines are flying to the country amid the ongoing war with Hamas. Karp expressed deep dismay that many people in the U.S. support Israel, but so few people speak out publicly. He says, I think so few people speak out because they believe they can skirt by with no opinion, but there is no one who doesn't have an opinion on Israel, especially if you are a big company, said Karp. There are a lot of people in the industry who are maybe not as pro-Israel as I am, but think of Israel as a very special place and generally are more understanding of the Israeli position and view Israel's accomplishments of building a nation from a desert. But they somehow believe that the safe position is to say nothing. Among the reasons for bringing Palantir's board to Israel, Karp said to embarrass other people who are pro-Israel in private, but somehow not in public. The rest of the article then talks a little bit more about what Palantir does. Karp also says Israel will probably not outperform in defending itself in the public space, but it very much can outperform in industry and software technology, again, becoming very bullish on the private sector for Israel. He also says, I started coming to Israel about 35 years ago, and sometime shortly you will actually get to hear about some of the things we have done to help Israel that I'm very proud of, he remarked without disclosing any further details. So, I mean, that first article was just really interesting to see because it was basically Karp acknowledging his admiration for the Israeli people, acknowledging his admiration for what's going on with Israel and how they're trying to defend themselves by having a mix of the private sector helping the public sector, and also his willingness as a CEO of a public company to take a stance. At the end of the day, he is of the belief that everyone has an opinion on Israel, and I believe if you're a public company CEO, you absolutely have an opinion on Israel. Israel is one of the big tech centers of the world. I mean, people call Israel Silicon Valley 2.0 by just all the entrepreneurship and startups that are there. So you obviously have an opinion because a lot of people are hiring talent from Israel, but a lot of people aren't necessarily speaking on Israel out of concerns of saying the wrong thing or offending the wrong people. Very nuanced topic. I'm not saying that everything Israel is doing is 100% correct. I'm not saying everything that, is going on in the world is black or white. Karp has criticized the Israeli government, even though he's a staunch supporter of them. So, it's not black or white. This is very nuanced. But at the end of the day, Karp believes that there is something called Western values and they need to be defended. And the exact execution and implementation of the defense of those values, that's where all the debate and nuance is. But what he and Peter Thiel, which have disagreed on politically almost everything, right? Karp is more progressively very social, and Peter Thiel is an Ayn Rand libertarian in terms of his philosophical understanding of the world. What they do agree on is that you want to have a philosophy that governs a society that values individualism. And a lot of the philosophies that exist in other parts of the world that don't really value democracy don't value individualism. And when they don't value individualism and individual freedom and rights and all this types of stuff, then you've got, philosophies that might end up doing really bad things or have on their national charter that Jewish people deserve to die. And that is what he and Thiel and the entire company around Palantir is completely against. I would imagine there's employees in Palantir that don't fully agree with Karp's political stance and being so explicit about it, or the company's stance of being so explicit. But Karp has made that decision. In terms of a shareholder, how you think about it, CodeStrap, who's a friend of the channel, said on this podcast a couple weeks ago on the channel that they are going to alienate a lot of people that are not fans of what Israel is doing right now. They're going to lose a lot of business from that. You have to decide as a shareholder, are you willing to hold even with that happening? Not only just from a moral perspective, but honestly from a business perspective. Do you think they'll be able to make up some of that revenue? Do you think they'll be able to get even more clients for the public stance that they've taken? Do you think they'll be able to, work with governments that respect what they've done in the past, in the future, given what they're doing with Israel, Ukraine right now? You've got to make that decision as a shareholder. I've made the decision pretty easily, and to me, I'm not the lack of business they'll get because of their public stance, I don't think is a reason for me sell my shares. But in general, that is something that I think everyone has to think about because they are being explicit. And if they're being explicit, that will have some negative effects. It's just a question of, do the positive effects outweigh that? So that was the first article, Times of Israel, documenting what Palantir is doing in Israel right now in Karp's visit. Now, here's the next article. This is from Bloomberg, okay? This is from Bloomberg. Shout out to this Twitter account, John, for posting the article here on Twitter. You guys can follow them as well. Here you go. So let's just read a little bit from it. Palantir, data analysis firm that provides militaries with AI models, is seeing high demand from Israel for new tools since the start of the war with Hamas on October 7th. Karp says, our products have been in great demand. We have begun supplying different products that we supplied before the start of the war, he said, declining to comment on which technologies were being offered. Before I go further, that is the quote. That is the quote that you need to know. Our products have been in great demand, and we have begun supplying different products than we supplied before. So when he's saying supplying before, that means they were giving some type of governmental intelligence to Israel. And post-Hamas, he's saying we are supplying different types of products. You would imagine some of the stuff that's more nuanced, more capable, some of the stuff they may be using in Ukraine, that they're giving to Israel in this time of war. So there you go. I mean, they are officially giving product and providing technology to Israel. The Denver-based firm, co-founded by Karp and billionaire Peter Thiel, is holding a board meeting in Tel Aviv for the first time in a gesture of solidarity with Israel as it enters its fourth month of war. AI for military purposes among the emerging technology's most controversial uses, with autonomous computer systems seen as having the potential to escalate conflicts, start wars, or ignore civilian casualties. Israel has previously acknowledged using AI-based systems in battle to help human operators identify targets and propose airstrikes. If the West didn't have real adversaries, Karp said he'd be one of the people trying to contain the AI's use in military. Quote from him, but the reality of our life now, as Israel knows, is our adversaries are real, dangerous, and they go so far outside the norms of behavior. And that goes to the philosophical thing I was just talking about which values do you stand for? And at the end of the day, you might disagree with the nuances of what's going on, but you don't disagree on adversarial ideologies that are competing against Western ideologies. And Karp and Palantir have picked Western ideologies, which is why they're defending Israel. Last year, Palantir unveiled its AIP, or AR, artificial intelligence platform, which can serve as an aid in battlefield intelligence and decision-making, including analyzing enemy targets and proposing battle plans. In an analyst call in November, the company said Israel is using its new Palantir government web services. We did know that. Today's article was just like real confirmation that they're definitely using it. The war begun when Hamas militants attacked southern Israel. Karp, who has been outspoken in support of Israel, defended the military campaign. Still, he said there was some pushback within the company over its backing of Israel in the war. He says, "We're not a monoculture. There are people who disagree with our decisions everywhere, especially our decision in support of Israel." He said they vocally disagree with it and their voices are heard, and we are moving forward with our support of Israel. Basically, the boss saying, look, I hear you, but if you want to leave, you can leave because I'm not changing my mind. There you go. It is happening. Palantir is officially in Israel. We got confirmation today. They are working in Israel. They are supplying the government defense technology. Are we getting revenue from this? I would imagine yes. It's not like Israel can't pay their debts. It's not like a Ukraine situation where, like they just didn't have the money. They needed the money from the United States. Israel is getting some money from the United States. But I don't know. Maybe Palantir didn't really ask for revenue yet. Maybe Palantir said, hey, use our software and eventually we'll figure that stuff out because this is more of a moral thing for them and they'll figure out the revenue. I think in the long term, this is the thing they needed to do, especially if they want to be an ally of countries in NATO. NATO is a $100 billion TAM, in my opinion, for them. They are going to be able to get a lot of countries over the next decade, given the geopolitical uncertainty we have. Like everyone thinks that, it's geopolitical uncertainty and it is what it is and that doesn't matter. It's like, no. That means money for Palantir because geopolitical uncertainty means countries are going to increase their defense spending. Increased defense spending means they have to spend on AI technology, not just Lockheed Martins and guns and helicopters. They have to actually buy the shit that makes them productive, the tactical nuclear weapons that Palantir is selling. And again, they're not selling it to sell it for the hell of it. They're selling it because shit like October 7th happens. Those attacks happen. The Russia invasion of Ukraine happens. Potential invasion of Taiwan by China happens. And so from that perspective, it seems likely that NATO is going to become a big market for them, but they're not going to get other deals if they don't, do the deals that they're supposed to do right now in terms of being supportive of Israel and protecting those Western values. So I don't know what the revenue is going to look like, but I do know that Palantir is very excited to be there in Israel and is supporting them. And we'll ultimately see how that plays out. They also are hiring a ton of Israeli employees. So you would imagine that they're recruiting talent from there. And that talent is going to inform how they think of products and different, ways that they're going to keep going forward. But in general, we got the confirmation. I mean, this is what we wanted to know. And we knew this, right? All of us basically knew this, but this was like real confirmation that Palantir is in Israel. They are deploying their software. And if Israel is actually able to carry out their strategic objective, which is eliminate Hamas, I'm assuming Palantir will have played a part in that. I don't know if that's going to happen. The war is in a very, interesting situation in terms of what's going on. And there's a lot of nuance to that. But the one thing that is not nuanced is Palantir's support for defending these values and stopping other values that they think are objectively bad. And as a result of that, they're going to keep going forward. So Palantir is in Israel. They are working. That is the update for today. Tomorrow, we got a bunch of stuff to talk about. We got Boeing and Airbus, a bunch of things I wanted to include today, but this was the episode for today. Palantir stock right now at $332, $16.76, up about 2.28% on the day. We will see what happens in the next coming days. All right, that's it for me. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And please leave your comments below. Do you think that Palantir should be supporting Israel? Also, one comment I did want to make. Yesterday in my Palantir Daily episode, I got some comments of people saying that my arguments around some of the Ukraine aid going to corruption was not necessarily correct. I actually agree with them. I think I framed it in the wrong way. My argument is not that all the money we're sending to Ukraine is horrible or it's going to be corruption. We're wasting hundreds of billions of dollars. My argument is that a subsection of that money, yes, it is going to very crucial things in Ukraine and literally the life or death between Ukrainian soldiers being alive and their families being alive and all that stuff. And that's important. But what's also important is just making sure a small allocation of that goes to defense tech companies that are on the cutting edge. And my concern yesterday was that why is the White House now meeting with Palantir when they should have been meeting with them years ago? If they haven't met before in the past, and given we haven't seen any explicit reporting, that's what I thought. So that's the only thing I had. Obviously, we do need to be funding Ukraine. I don't believe we should be giving them all the money in the world. There should be some type of a limit, and not all of that is going to corruption, but a subsection of that definitely needs to go to the Andurils and Palantirs of the world because they are the ones, from what we're seeing in the Time magazine post, Washington Post piece, like all the pieces we've seen on what Palantir is doing in Ukraine, that they're actually helping when it comes to stopping people from stepping into landmines because you have geospatial intelligence, right? Like this stuff matters, and I feel like the U.S. should be subsidizing that more. The U.S. just passed $886 billion of defense spending. All other NATO countries are probably going to be spending more money as well in order to up their budgets when it comes to defense. And if that money is going to go somewhere, some of it should definitely go to the companies that are actually trying to build technology to help these countries have a chance. So that's it for me. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. I will see you tomorrow on the next episode.